Okay, X-Men Origin First Class. Ironically, seems more like I'm watching X-Men Origins Magneto. They put a lot of time and effort into Magneto's character. I mean, a lot. You're going to learn more about Magneto than you do about pretty much any other character, almost including Professor X. Of course, they begin with their two entirely different background stories. Professor X, kind of grew up in more of a lap of luxury, and how he had a sister named Raven, so we know her now as Mystique. No mention of the stepbrother Kane, but... And then, of course, Eric grew up in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany, which is ironically being overseen by Kevin Bacon's character. Different, and a bit kind of on the brutal side, too. This movie is really not super kid-friendly. You do see... One of the first times you actually get to meet Sebastian Shaw in the Hellfire Club, it is at a lingerie party in Las Vegas. So all the women are in, era-appropriate lingerie. And decent amount of people do get killed in somewhat gruesome ways for this sort of, movie. People do get wrapped up in barbed wire and pretty much killed that way. Now, there's some of the more unique background stories. Professor X was kind of a womanizer and kind of a jerk. He has this perfectly set up, game where he looks at somebody and is like, oh, I see that you have, your eyes are different colors. So he goes to the technical terminology for it, says that they're mutants, how they should be proud of it, and running through this whole long gamut. It's actually done really well. So you can tell he had some phenomenal game back when he had a full head of hair and legs. Now, the overall backdrop of this story, of course, is kind of like the Cold War era, the Cuban Missile Crisis. So you have this really rich background. And then you've got two people from two entirely different, backgrounds. One kind of grew up in the lap of luxury and got to experience some of the finer things in life. The other one, more or less, born and raised in a concentration camp, knows just about only hate and anger. So you see a little bit of Charles Xavier going through the motions of trying to find out more about, the next step in human evolution. Of course, then Moira McTaggart shows up because they know about Sebastian Shaw, and she knows that there are other people who have these bizarre abilities. So he kind of becomes tasked by the CIA to try to, find and stop Shaw. While that's going on, Magneto was kind of systematically going around and killing every single person who he dealt with in the concentration camp. And he's doing this with all the stealth and guile of a James Bond, with the mutant ability to control metal. Yeah, so there's ridiculous beguiling nature and a phenomenal job. The guy who plays Magneto is ridiculously good. Like a scene stealer, period. There are some slight nods to the previous trilogy. Wolverine is in this, for enough to pretty much order another round and say two words. But it was brilliant and it came off perfect. Mystique does make mention to the Rebecca Romijn Stamos version. I'm still trying to figure out why, in all facts and figures, when they show Mystique not in a costume and she's just in the blue skin, it is actually her naked. So therefore means if you saw the original trilogy, whenever you saw Rebecca Romijn Stamos' character, that is a naked Mystique, which also is when she got drugged and her powers went away. Now, when I first saw the initial trailers, I saw that Beast was blue. He doesn't begin blue. And some of the training scenes where it's like, okay, Banshee, you're going to learn how to fly. Okay, how? Well, this is rigged up, and this should work if you know how to do the proper, frequencies. It'll bounce back off the ground and it'll carry you around. So you do see some training montages. Is this technically the First Class? Have you not actually read that section of the comic? Whenever I hear the First Class, I normally think about, Cyclops, not his brother Havoc. Jean Grey, who's not in this one. Iceman, again, not in this one. So it just kind of makes sense that they used characters they didn't use in the previous movies, with the exception of, Magneto, Professor X, and Mystique. They really don't touch on any other characters that have previously been used. Of course, it does run into some minor problems knowing that in X-Men Origins they showed a very young Cyclops and an older Professor X. So it almost makes Cyclops a really, really, really younger brother of Havoc. Havoc, pretty good job on his special effects. They also introduced the character of Darwin, who they kind of didn't use to a full extent. I'll just leave his character at that. The character of Angel, who I think in the comics is called Pixie, that's Lenny Kravitz's daughter, who has little, essentially kind of like little gossamer wings. Different. I know nothing of her character, can't say if it was done well. Their Joe and Havoc, done fairly well. I'm still used to Havoc from the comics where he can control it through his hands. So I'm used to a much higher level of control Havoc than the younger version. Beast, pretty good job. You actually can see, except for when he first is in the blue form, they made some kind of like makeup mistakes, so you don't really see his mouth move as much. But towards the end, it's a lot more fluid. So that's actually really good. Azazel, again, I know nothing of his character. I do think that he actually is the father of Nightcrawler, which is kind of weird because Mystique, obviously, even though she's portrayed as a younger girl, obviously has the hots for Magneto. So I don't know how, but again, it's trying to reconcile comics with the movie. So this is not really an action blockbuster. There's a lot of time spent in the drama and interpersonal relationships. You do get some pretty decent action sequences, though. You get the first time Magneto goes against Shaw, which is done very well. That's also when he meets Xavier, as well as the long ending sequence, which of course, if you've seen the trailers, you know that takes place in the height of, you know, Russian ships, U.S. ships, and a ship with nuclear warheads going towards Cuba. And they say Cuba or Kuber, depending on who is pronouncing it in the movie, or Cuba, depending on your regional dialect. And then of course their ending conflict there, as well as the birth of the Magneto helmet. All done very well, so nice little cues here and there. Again, really not chock full of action. This is primarily a drama with mutants. And that having been said, I thought it was actually a very, very well done movie. Did it seem like they had a few too many characters sometimes? Yeah. It seemed like if they would have trimmed down the number of mutant characters by maybe like one or two a little bit earlier on, it probably would have fleshed out better. But all, it was actually a very, very well done movie. I'd probably say out of the X-Men quadrilogy, I don't include Wolverine in this one, sorry. You know, 1 was very good, 2 was excellent, 3 I wish almost never existed. This one is almost every bit as good as 2. 2 being more action oriented, this one is a lot more drama oriented, and that is X-Men First Class.